Thank you, Ryan. That was beautiful. Good morning. It's so good to see your beautiful, bright, shining faces on this wonderful Sunday morning here in paradise. Yes, we are. Listen, one Sunday morning, a mother went in to work her son and tell him to get up and get ready for church, for which he replied, "I'm not going to church." So she asked him, "Why not?" He says, "I'll give you two good reasons. One, they don't like me, and two, I don't like them." So she said, "Well, you got to go to church, and let me give you two good reasons why you should go to church. One, you're 54 years old, and two, you're the pastor." Very good. I wanted to get a laugh out because we're talking about living the high life this morning. So listen, I want to ask you one good question, and I ask if you would tell me the truth when I ask you this question. And here is the question. Are you high today? Yeah. Is anybody in here high today? Tell me the truth. If you're high. So if you're not, you should be. So why don't you help me out and ask your neighbor, ask them, are you high today? If they say no, say, yeah. Tell them you should be. Very good. So I got some high people and I got some that are not so high. But I just want to tell you we're going to go high this morning. And listen, if your answer was no to the question, no, I'm not high this morning, maybe it was because you've been inundated and saturated like I have with the news that's been going on through media, social media, internet, the news of doom and gloom, of worry, of doubt. And how many of you turn on the news and every story they run is breaking news, right? Every story is breaking news. News of doom, news of gloom, breaking news, right? Or maybe your answer to the question of are you high was, no, I'm not high because I'm facing a life challenge. I have a life situation that I'm facing. Maybe it's a health challenge. Maybe it's a relationship challenge. Maybe it's a financial challenge that has maybe brought you to a spirit of lowness, a consciousness of lowness, and that situation is so deep it's causing you to forget that God is in control of all things. Well, if you're in that place, listen, I want to tell you right now, things are about to change. We're about to get high. Everybody ready to get high with me? Things are about to change. Tell your neighbor, things are about to change. You ready to get high this morning. Listen, we getting ready to get messed up. See, I'm getting ready to get messed up this morning. How many want to be messed up this morning today? Let's get messed up in the goodness of God, the all-sufficiency of God, messed up in the isness of God, the I am of God, the omnipotence, the omniscience, the all-knowing truth of God. So I want you to run out of here messed up on truth today, high in the spirit of the goodness of God. So here's some breaking good news I'm going to bring you. Your plane is getting ready to take off. Destination, new altitude. Say new altitude. New altitude. Yes. So when I'm talking about living the high life, I'm talking about being open to the free-flowing spirit of God in consciousness and manifestation. Laying hold of the high and lofty ideas of the Christ mind. And then bringing those spiritual ideas into manifestation in your mind, your body, and your affairs. I'm talking about spiritual attainment when I'm saying living the high life. Becoming conscious of spirit, conscious of God. Living high is having a spiritual awakening to the truth of who God is in you, through you, and as you. That's what living high in this context is, not the other high that maybe some of you were thinking about, but also seeking the things that are above. In Colossians 3:1, it says, seek spirituality versus materiality. So getting high means seeking the things that are above, focusing your mind on things that are eternal. That's how we experience high life living. Seeking to unfold the Christ mind and abide in spiritual consciousness. Because that's the thing that's going to lead us to the path of joy, of happiness, of peace, of abundant living, seeking to unfold the Christ consciousness in us. In essence, church, it is this, stepping up to your real, true power in divine ideas. Say power. Living the high life is stepping up to your true power, where you enter the unlimited part of your being, the infinite, unlimited part of your being. How many want to get there? Experience life from the infinite, unlimited part of your being. And listen, that journey starts with consciousness. Your general idea, your general attitude of your consciousness is what gets you to high living. Because we know that consciousness is the basis of all reality. Say consciousness. And any shift in consciousness changes every aspect of our lives. So when you shift in consciousness, your life changes. When you shift from a low conscious state to a high conscious state, your life changes. When you shift from down here to up there, you live in high and your life changes. The Bible says this, as a man thinketh, so is he. So our consciousness is what brings us the life that we live. In fact, Unity Principle says this, we create our life experiences through our way of thinking. Say thinking. So our thought process is what produces our life situation. So it starts with consciousness. And we talk about consciousness all the time in Unity. It's one of the very core principles, ideas of Unity, consciousness. And every time I talk about it, I think, you know what, maybe we need to revisit what consciousness is, because if we're going to go high, we need to know what we're getting high on, right? And we need to know what it is that's going to take us there. So really, it's consciousness that takes us to highness. And what is consciousness? Consciousness is awareness. It's knowing. It's an awareness and a knowing of who you are, whose you are, what you have. That's what consciousness is. When you're aware of what's going on in your life. Consciousness is the composite of ideas, thoughts, emotions, sensation, and knowledge that make up the conscious, subconscious, and superconscious phase of mind. That was deep, right? That's really high. Subconscious, conscious, and superconscious phase of mind. Consciousness is all that man is aware of, spirit, soul, and body. Everything that affects man's being is consciousness. Say consciousness. So I really wanted you to get high with me. So I wanted to take you higher in the things of consciousness. And so how many of you are familiar with Deepak Chopra? Deepak Chopra is I love Deepak Chopra and his teachings and his writings. And I ran across a study that he talked about higher consciousness. And this is what Deepak said about consciousness. He says the average person only experiences 3 states of consciousness in an entire lifetime. 3 states: deep sleep, dreams, and awakening state of consciousness. That's all we normally experience, y'all. But he said to experience the higher spiritual life that we want as spiritual beings, as we should as spiritual beings, he says that we need to ascend to higher states of consciousness. And so he introduces these 4 concepts, these 4 higher states of consciousness that will help us elevate in our living. The first state of consciousness he talks about is soul consciousness. Say soul consciousness. Say it again, soul consciousness. We experience this when we meditate, which takes us beyond thinking and feeling. How many of you meditate in the room? So when you're meditating, you're operating in soul consciousness, that feeling that takes you beyond thinking and feeling. When you meditate, it brings you into a calm, centered, intuitive way of living daily, soul consciousness. Then he says there's a thing called cosmic consciousness. Awareness is present all the time in every state, waking, dreaming, and sleeping states. That's cosmic consciousness. You can associate that within the Christian tradition. They says that, look, cosmic consciousness is in the body, being in the body, in the world, but not of the world. So when you hear that and you say, I'm in the world and not of the world, you're operating in cosmic consciousness. Then there is what's called divine consciousness. Say divine consciousness. Apprehension of life that represents the real engagement of the heart and love as the engine of spiritual growth. In divine consciousness, it's when our soul is stirred up and we have this profound sense of joy, of gratitude, of peace, of happiness, of compassion. When we're feeling that, we are in divine consciousness. Now, it is easy living in Hawaii to always stay in divine consciousness. I wake up in the morning and I am immediately in joy. You look around this island, it's so beautiful. It's enough to remind you of the divine presence of God, always and in all ways. So when you're feeling joyful, You are operating in divine consciousness. I mean, in divine consciousness, it means that wherever you go and whatever you are doing, you do it in the awareness of the all presence of God, the presence of the divine. So how do we live in divine consciousness? What that looks like, that means that we ascend above our human nature to elevate into our divine nature. When we're in divine consciousness, we're living out of our divine nature. How many of you want to stay there in your divine nature? The divine nature of the power of God living in, through, and as you. That's when you're in divine consciousness. How you're getting higher, we're getting higher. And then finally, he says there's unity consciousness. Oneness or unity. It dominates our awareness in all details of our life. In unity consciousness, he said that's the ultimate level of freedom from fear. Now, we are unity. And if we can't be in any other high level state of consciousness, we certainly should be in a unity state of consciousness, right? Where we are aware of the oneness of God in us. When we operate in the one, the I am of God in us. When we operate in the oneness of God moving in, through, and as us. That's unity consciousness. It says here that when we're in unity consciousness, everything is all God. Everything is all God. It's the state that moves us past any thoughts of fear, of lack, of limit, because it's all God. Can you say all God? All God. So Deepak says that as we move and ascend in these consciousnesses, as we unfold, it opens, expand the reality of our life. So I wanted to find an example to share what that looks like. And the best example I could find was an example of an act of miracle by Jesus. Now, I love Jesus. Jesus is our way sure. He is the truth. And now, listen, if there's anybody that lived in consciousness and high consciousness, who lived in an elevated state, was Jesus, right? So I found this story about Jesus feeding the 5,000. How many of you know of that story in the Bible? But I went to one of my favorite books by one of my favorite authors. How many of you know of Eric Butterworth? He's one of my favorite. I love his teachings. And one of my favorite books is called Discover the Power Within You. This book opened me up spiritually like never before. I have a quest for the knowledge and the knowing of God and the deep things of God. I'm always reading. I always want to live out who I am in divine nature and understand who I am in God and who God is in me. And so this book, if you want to elevate your spiritual life, get this book, Discovering the Power Within You. Well, look, in the book, in one of the chapters called The Miracle of Abundance, Eric Butterworth talks about this story of Jesus and the disciples and the 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. And so what happened is Jesus is teaching a multitude of people. And the disciples come to him, look, with the lack story. They come to him with doom and gloom. How many got people that come to your life? Every time they show up, they got a negative story. They got some doom. They got some gloom. So here come the disciples with some bad news of not enough with Jesus. They said, listen, Jesus, you've been teaching to these people. You've been teaching to them all night. You've been preaching for 5 hours. It's heading into the evening. These folk are hungry, and we don't have enough food to feed them, and we don't have enough money to buy the food to feed them, right? So Jesus says, well, what do you have? They said, we got 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. Now listen, anytime you're feeling lack, look at what you got, right? Anytime you're feeling low, look at what you got. So Jesus said, give me the 2 fish and the 5 loaves of bread. And the story goes that Jesus took the 2 fish and the 5 loaves of bread. He broke them. He lifted them up and he blessed them. He distributed them, and there was more than enough. It says it was more than enough to feed the 5,000 and things that was left over. Now listen, y'all, I'm going to make somebody mad. Jesus was a metaphysician. Listen, Jesus lived in the high realms of things. And Eric Butterworth says this. What Jesus did metaphysically was this. When he broke the bread and when he broke the fish, what he did was he took his mind and eye off the symbol of not enough, the symbol of lack, and he focused his attention on the substance of under the symbol. So he focused his attention on God, the all-supplying God, God, the ever-constant, immediate supply. So he took his mind off what was not there to what he knew is always there. And whenever you're going through a situation, I don't care whatever it is, take your mind off of that thing, that symbol. It may be a symbol of health, a symbol of lack of money, whatever it is. Take your mind off of that and then put your mind on the substance up under that symbol. Is that good? Can you do that? Put your mind under the substance of God, the infinite, all-powerful, ever-supplying, rich, unlimited supply of God. That's how you elevate in consciousness. So how many of you are going to take your mind off the symbol and put your mind on the substance? That's how you advance in high living substance. And it says the more conscious you become of the presence of the living substance, the more it will manifest in your life. So the more you keep your mind on the things of God, the power of God, the supply of God, the wisdom of God, the more you keep your mind on the good of God, and everything that God has provided in your life, you'll get more and more and more and more of that. That's high living. Listen, but what it requires is faith. Faith. Faith in the substance. Faith in the God of good. Faith in the God of unlimited supply. And so faith, Hebrews says, is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So when you want to elevate your life, you got to elevate your faith. Say, elevate my faith. My faith in the sufficiency of God. Charles Fillmore says this about faith. He says, faith is the ability to perceive substance, to draw it forth, to form it and shape it into whatever you need. The Apostle Paul says, why? So you got to stir up the gifts of faith. Stir it up. So to live high, we got to stir up faith. That whatever is in our mind, whatever we desire, we got to lift it up through faith. Is that all right? So I found this story. I thought, how do I bring this really close to home? How do I really get this to sink into them? How do I get you to really get it? So I found this story of faith, this story of high consciousness, this story of high elevated living, this story of pushing us to the next level. And I want to share it with you. Let it bless you. listen, I'm your pusher today. Pushing you into the high level of living that God desired for you. The formula, raise your consciousness. Keep your attention on the substance and not the symbol. Stir up your faith like an eagle and soar as high as you can get. Stay messed up on the goodness of God. Take it in every day of your life and watch your life change forever. Did I get a good job? Are you messed up today? Stay high in the things of God and soar like the eagle that you are. God bless you.